Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and 2017 brought along a lot of releases for Apple, surprisingly more than I remember, and when I was compiling the list for this video, there were quite a few good things and some bad things that Apple did in 2017, so I thought we'd go over those. Now we're going to start with the beginning of the year and the good things, and then go back and look at the bad things. So the first thing they did, they updated their MacBook Pros and their iMacs to newer processors. So they all get the Kaby Lake processors, and the Kaby Lake processors help with H.265 encoding and also give the MacBooks a little bit better battery life. They have some more efficiencies built into the processor, and if you have a 2017 MacBook Pro or iMac, you got these upgrades when you bought one. Now, they also upgraded the MacBook Air, but they didn't really do a whole lot as far as modern processors. They just upgraded it and bumped it in speed a little bit for those that still wanted one. Now, the next thing they did was come out with the iPad Pro. Now, the iPad Pro came with ProMotion, and this is a 120 hertz display that's super fast and allows for super smooth scrolling just about through anything. And this ProMotion display is something that I find to be very impressive, and it has to be seen to be appreciated. And around the same time, one of the other positives they did was release iOS 11, or at least show it for the iPad. And the iPad gets basically the best benefits from iOS 11 with a wholly reworked interface. It's got drag and drop just like it does on the iPhones, but it just seems to be more cohesive and much more usable when you're using an iPad. Now, later in the year, when they release other products, they showed the iPhones and the Apple Watch, and the Apple Watch got a major update that it really needed quite badly, in my opinion. It was okay until this point, and now we have an actually really great product. So the Apple Watch is now basically what I thought it should be from the beginning. They've refined it. They've refined the interface. It's fast. It's waterproof. And it's very usable. And it works like you would expect. You don't think about it. It just does the job. Now, around those times, they also showed the 4K Apple TV. And this is, again, another positive. So the Apple TV really needed an update. Not so much to its form factor. They didn't change much here. But they did change the ability to do 4K. This is all scratched up from trying to put the HDMI cable in, and it scratches it all up pretty bad because it's plastic, but thankfully you don't see that too much. But as far as this device goes, it's 4K. You can tell that from the menu button with the circle around it. That's really the only way to look at it and know it's the 4K device. But it's finally something they upgraded, and they also gave us all of the 4K movies available if you'd bought movies previously and 4K was available. So if you bought some movies through the iTunes movie store or the Apple store, whatever you want to call it, you can actually see the 4K versions if they're available, and HDR versions as well. Now, of course, around the Apple TV time and all of that, they showed the iPhones. And the iPhone 8, 8 Plus, and 10 were shown and then released, and this is a really good thing for a lot of people in that a lot of people are going to really enjoy having similar form factors to the iPhone 6 Plus and 6, but an updated design with better cameras, better processors, and just some new things to the display that make it look even better. So it's a classic design at this point. It works well. It's tried and true, and I think it's a good upgrade for a lot of people. But for those that were sick of this design, they came out with the iPhone 10. And the iPhone 10 brings in this whole new design with Face ID and a new interface as well that's all swipe-based or gesture-based. And for most people, I think a lot of people like this. In fact, I polled a bunch of you, and many of you said that your favorite thing of the year was the iPhone 10 or the 8 Plus. Basically, it was between these two devices, and your least favorite thing was iOS 11, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. Now, the next positive or good thing they did was bring wireless charging to the iPhones. Wireless charging was something that was not necessary per se, but something that's very convenient and definitely nice to use once you've got it. It's hard not to use it if you don't have it. The next positive thing they did as well is talk about the iMac Pro. And the iMac Pro just recently came out, but the iMac Pro is something that professionals were worried about. Maybe Apple had abandoned the Mac Pro market and wasn't caring too much about creators anymore. It seems they've changed their tune, or at least communicated better that they do care about us. And they've released the iMac Pro and said also the Mac Pro is coming out later next year. And that leads into my negatives. The negatives for this year are the iMac Pro's price is pretty astronomical, but not absurd when you go and price out what it costs to build one of those devices yourself with all those components. And then also having to wait until maybe the following year or even 2019 for the Mac Pros. We don't know what they look like. We don't know their pricing or anything else, but that's what we're waiting on. Now, the rest of these negatives are a lot of things that you've communicated to me that you really wish that they did. So the first thing, or the first bad thing really, other than the Mac Pro not being out this year with new displays and things, is iOS 11. iOS 11 is running on both of these devices. I have a beta on this one. I have the regular version on the iPhone X, and it's been really buggy for a lot of people, including myself. It's not terrible right now. They've really upgraded it with iOS 11.2 and 11.2.1 and all of those different versions. It's getting much better, but it's still much more buggy than I think 10.2 was at this point. So I think we're going to see it be more refined, but there's some changes I went over in a different video that I think that Apple could really fix in 2018. I'm hopeful that they'll listen, and with iOS 12 they'll make some really big changes. The next negative is there's no iPhone X Plus. Now, technically, this display is larger than the iPhone 8. However, or 8 Plus rather. However, it's not as usable because it's narrower. And due to it being so narrow, it just feels smaller. When you're using an 8 Plus and then you go to a 10 or vice versa, you can definitely tell the difference. This is much more like using an 8. So an 8 Plus would be welcomed, or a 10 Plus rather would be welcome. I'm not sure that we'll see that, but maybe we will at some point. The next negative is that there is no USB-C on these iPhones or iPads. USB-C is on everything Apple makes at this point. Even some of the Apple TVs have it. The Apple TVs have, if you don't have the 4K version, they have a USB Type-C connector in here. You can connect to your computer if you need to. I would love to see Lightning replaced with USB-C, and USB-C will become universal on everything. I'm hopeful for that. I'm not really holding my breath for that, but I'm hopeful that maybe we'll see that in 2018. The next thing is they delayed the HomePod to 2018. Now, this could be seen as a positive or a negative. They showed it to us, said it would come out, and then they delayed it. I'd rather have it right than them release it and it be terrible. I'd rather have them release it be right, and we all love it. So I'm okay with them delaying it to make it right. I'm not okay with them saying it's going to come out and then delaying it later. They should have just shown it to us as a preview and then kind of released it when it was ready. So that's one thing that's a positive or negative depending on how you look at it. And then finally, the big story of the year, they slow down older phones. If you have an iPhone 6 like this one and the battery's depleted, there's multiple reasons why it gets slowed down so that it doesn't shut off and things like that. But they slow it down to help remedy some of the problem. You replace the battery and that should speed everything back up. And Apple's offered $30 battery replacements for iPhone 6 and newer if they're not under warranty. So that's a positive and a negative. It's a negative in that, yes, they slow it down. There's reasons that they need to do that in some cases, and sometimes it's unacceptable. It just depends on your viewpoint on that. But their solution is great for some, but not so great for others, especially if you don't have an Apple store nearby. So those are all of the things they've done in 2017. I'm hopeful for 2018 to show us a newer, hopefully more of a redesign of iOS 11 or iOS 12 rather, or whatever they're going to call it. I'd love to see the new Mac Pro. I'd also like to see some more ports or maybe a slight redesign to some of the MacBooks. It's hard to say, but they've been busy, I'm sure. We'll probably see Face ID on an iPad, and we'll see a whole bunch of other things as well. But let me know your thoughts about 2017 with Apple in the comments below. What was your favorite thing? What were your least favorite things? I'd love to hear what you have to say. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe and like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.